It has been this week 10 years since I picked this Ford up new off the lot and brought it home. So this week it is exactly 10 years old as far as my ownership is concerned. And in this video, I want to let you know how things have gone with it. This is a Ford F-150 pickup truck. It is a short bed. It is 2015. It has the 5.0 V8 Coyote engine in it. It has the 6-speed transmission. It's just before the 10 speeds came out. And it is a fire bronze in color. It's the first year that the aluminum body came out. And I wasn't sure how that was going to work out. This vehicle has 132,000 miles on it. It has pulled a trailer, a small trailer, roughly 50,000 miles of that cross country. The maintenance I've done on this vehicle is pretty typical, but I sometimes go a little beyond what is the norm. It's had religiously 5,000 mile oil changes. The truck came as semi-synthetic, so that's what I kept using. I have had, and let me check to make sure I get it right, about every 35,000 miles, I have the transmission oil and filter changed. I know it says 100,000 miles, but I'm trying to avoid any transmission issues with this 6-speed. Every 100,000 miles, more or less, sometimes a little bit less, I had the radiator fluid flushed, the transfer case, and the differentials, all the fluids changed in them. The transfer case, I actually did it twice at about 50 and 100,000 miles. Other than that, I've done all of the other 100,000 mile maintenances, the plugs, things like that you're supposed to change. So I've kept up with all of that stuff. Issues that I've had with the truck, and these are non-maintenance issues, things like, brakes, things like that. Those are things that wear out and you're supposed to have done, and it depends on how you use them. But non-maintenance issues are things that I consider went and I had to have fixed, where in some other trucks they may not have had issues with them. The big one was the lead frame, and this was a bulletin that was put out by Ford that they had trouble with a lot of lead frames, and they'd actually had a not a recall, but if you brought it in with a problem, they would pay for it up to the 2014s. The problem persisted after that for a year or two, but the 2015 wasn't covered on it. So I had to have it, done. And, it's an $800 job when you have it done in the Ford Tech service station, and that's what I had done. So that's one thing that might not have gone wrong, but did, and I had to have replaced. The IWEs, which are the four-wheel drive actuators in the wheels, I've had this wheel, the passenger side, done twice, and I don't know why. They're actually a spline that under normal conditions is closed and the four-wheel drive is connected, but when you have it in two-wheel drive, a vacuum pulls it apart and disconnects it. If you don't have that done, it makes an awful sound in the wheels. And it's not inexpensive, but I had to have it done twice. And I know these things do wear out, but I think mine wore out prematurely. I did have a starter replaced at about 95,000, and that is a consumable. Most people will have, or everyone will have, a starter done at some point. So that really doesn't fit in this category. I did the clock spring myself, which is a unit behind the airbag in the steering wheel that has to do with controlling all the buttons on the wheel so that they work properly. And it wasn't a daunting repair, but I now know how to replace a clock spring, and it worked out well. And just this morning, I came back from my Ford dealership, and I had the transmission cooler hoses replaced because I had a tiny leak in one of them. And hoses are kind of a consumable, something that will go over time, and those are the only hoses I've ever had replaced. So I'm not too concerned, about that. So all of these issues I consider minor in comparison to some other vehicles I owned. And one in particular that actually caused me to buy this vehicle was I had a very nice truck. It was a Chevrolet Silverado Z71. And for anybody who knows trucks, they're pretty nice. As a matter of fact, it was the same color as this. It had a V8 in it, and it was four-wheel drive. And um, it worked really good. I had a whole lot of trouble with brakes corroding and wearing out prematurely with it, but that was about it. That was kind of not fun though. But at 84,000 miles, I went to get it inspected, and it wouldn't pass inspection because of frame rust. And it was a 2003, and I have come to realize since then that the 2003s, 2004 models had this problem. It was a known issue. I had the frame repaired for a couple $1,000s from a company that does it, and it lasted 2 more years. And I went to get it inspected again, and it wouldn't inspect. And I actually had someone who has a fleet of not new trucks that they purchased to do plowing. They had a plowing business, and they took it, put it up on the lift, and literally told me that if they tried to push snow with this, the frame would completely break in half. So I couldn't get it inspected, and I couldn't use it. So at a time when I really wasn't planning on doing it, because I had a vehicle that really looked good on the outside and ran really good, that only had actually about 95,000 miles at the time, which I consider, half-life on a vehicle, I had to get rid of. I had no choice. So I decided that I would move for the first time in my life away from Chevys, and I looked at the Fords. Now, the 2015, the aluminum body, was the first year that they made these, and it was like, untested. It sounded good on paper, and there was all those commercials about how horribly soft it was and everything. I ended up purchasing one, and I can say right off the bat, I never, ever want a steel vehicle again. Let's see why. I'm going to take you a walk around and show you any areas that have any corrosion on them. And I want to start right over on this side. And as you can see here in Maine, we've had a little bit of salt on the road. I'm in Maine. One of the reasons that Silverado rusted out so badly is because we have a lot of salt. And they use sodium chloride, which is really bad, for rust and corrosion. They used to use potassium chloride, which they stopped using because people complained so much about it. I actually had a service person who did brakes telling me that he was getting rich doing brake lines because of the potassium chloride. Now they use sodium chloride, salt, and they use magnesium chloride, which isn't as bad as potassium chloride, but it's worse than salt. So we're kind of like halfway in there and being in the rust belt, but using stuff that makes the rust belt rustier. And I'm starting on this side of the truck because I want to show you a scratch, some damage that was done 8 years ago in this 10-year-old vehicle. This, let me wipe this away, is a scratch right behind the rear door where the box starts. This scratch was done 8 years ago. And normally when you get a scratch like this on a truck, you get some touch-up paint and you quickly touch it up, because if you don't, this eventually turns brown, rusts, works on the paint, and then you have a little bit bigger problem. I never put any touch-up paint on this. This whitish color right here is actually where the scratch went through the paint, went through the primer, and that's aluminum right there. And that is 8 years old. And I have 2 or 3 places on the truck like this. And this point right up here, this is my fiberglass cover on the back of the box. And at one point it slid over. And when I would open up the truck, it would make this little paint area come off right here. You can see the brown of the paint. You can see some of the primer, sort of gray, and that very center area, that is aluminum, and that's been there for years. And it's exactly the same as it was when it was worn off. If I had a steel truck, that would be rust. Now, as I talk about various points that normally corrode on a truck, because aluminum can corrode, it may not rust, but it has its own special type of corrosion. I want you to note that you'll see some areas that look like they're kind of greased over, oiled over, because I do have something done for the frame, and part of it is to do the whole body. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But some points where corrosion happens. And it can be in the door here, except that I've had the entire inside of the truck rhino lined when I got it, for protection. It's a coating that goes on. It's very hard, very tough, and I think it's really worthwhile having it done. You can't see much of it because I have this, and before I get a whole lot of people asking me about it. This is a slide out drawer that I made. I'll put a link to it at the end of the video. It'll literally hold 1,000 pounds fully extended, which is 6 feet out. I haven't tried that, but it's designed when I built it as 1,000 pounds, and it looks kind of wood here, but it's really a steel frame underneath with large industrial slides. And I really like this for packing up and doing things, particularly for camping. It's pretty nice. Now, some points of contention for corrosion or rust can be right in here, and particularly where the hinges are for the tailgate, and there's nothing. And of course, along the edge of the back of the bed, there is also nothing. In my other pickups that I had, the last 2 anyway, I had replaced those areas at least once because they got kind of dangerously rusted, and I didn't want to lose the tailgate on the road. And that's kind of a common thing to do for some of them. I don't know if it would have been for this one if it had been steel, but these are aluminum, and it hasn't been an issue. Another area that is an issue with many trucks is the fenders right in this area over the tire. I have seen so many, and I actually have a relative who had this vehicle that was a 2014 and not 15, the year that they had the steel. And this was rusted through all along here on both sides. And of course they had to get it fixed. With this, there's nothing. And let's take a quick look on the inside down here. And you will find it difficult to see because there is an undercoating on it. But I can show you that there is no corrosion at all. So let's see if we can get up under here. And here is the area along that edge. It is dirty. I don't clean it out. But in the areas where I have cleaned it out, there's absolutely nothing anywhere in this edge. And another place is in the seam right here at the bottom of the door panels. And this and any other truck I've owned should at least been showing rust, particularly where the seams are. But there's no corrosion. And I don't think there ever will be. Also, sometimes the rocker panels can have an issue. And this area, and particularly the area right up underneath where the rocker panels are, down up into here, they're all fine. And you usually see some type of corrosion down where the door hinge is. And there's nothing. Now, this is going to be hard to see because it does have a coating on it, and of course it's kind of dirty too. But all around these seams under the hood and under the front edge of the hood, there is no corrosion at all anywheres. Or along where the fenders bolt onto the vehicle, there's nothing. And I'm sure many of you who own trucks are aware the very front edge of the hood gets beat up, and corrosion often starts on this edge. But we have nothing. Now next, we're going to take a quick look underneath the truck and coming to the undercoating. For those of you who are familiar with undercoating sprays like fluid film, they're a biodegradable oil that you have done every year. There is a company called Crown, and they're widespread throughout Canada because Canada, you know, the whole area is the Rust Belt. And there are a few places in the northern United States where they have come into. One is about 60 miles away from me up in the Lewiston, Maine area. And it costs $149 per year to drive up there. They put it on a lift, they spray the underneath, and they spray, you know, all the door panels inside the tailgate, um, uh, everywhere. So when I bring it home, the thing is dripping in the driveway. It doesn't hurt tar because it's not a petroleum product. But the whole thing is coated every year. You have it done when you get a new vehicle, and they guarantee the rust for the life of the vehicle, and the warranty is transferred to the next owner. You can transfer it. If you don't get it within 6 months of getting a vehicle, they will still do it, and it'll still work really good, but they do not warranty it. So it's definitely still worth it at almost any time in your vehicle's age. I've never had this done before. We used to have Z-Bar, which is almost like a tar coating around the frame that if it peels off creates pockets and rust. So that was a decent solution when it's all there was. But this oil undercoating is really, really worth it. They've taken me under the lift when they've had this up, spraying it 3 times in the 10 years. The last time was last year. And they'll wipe away the old oil, and they'll show me that the frame is still the original black paint from when the truck was new. And they let me take a look through holes into the frame where stuff builds up, and it's coated with that stuff. It's filled with it so that the corrosion, the rust, doesn't happen. Of course, with an F-150, the body is aluminum, but the rest of it is steel. That's why undercoating the underside for me is really important, because that was the problem that I had with the Silverado before. Now, this isn't going to be too easy to see if you can see any rust, because you can't see it because it's coated. But if I were to take and do this, that's the stuff that I've taken off. That right there is black paint. And the entire underside of the vehicle is like that. Here in Maine, this should look like coral by this point in time. This is amazing. I have a pretty much rustless truck. A little bit around the axles. Of course, the exhaust system, which heats up, looks, you know, rust brown. but there is no rust or corrosion. I mean, the brake lines, anything, there's nothing anywhere. And you can kind of see, if you look underneath, you can kind of see the oil. Let's go take a look at the front. Okay, here's the front side. And as far as the frame is concerned, it's doing pretty darn good. But the entire truck, all the way down, is in fantastic shape as far as rust is concerned. Very, very little. But like I said, in Maine, a vehicle like this often looks like coral. And here we are looking from the back. A little dirty. You can see the oil. Even the wheel and the spare has been done. And these that are part of the hitch are usually pretty well rusted by this time. As you can see, the exhaust system, even though it's stainless, will discolor. And I wish I could show you down through the inside of the frame, but it kind of looks like this. This isn't actually the inside of the frame, but in the inside, it looks pretty much like it does on the outside. I've owned a lot of vehicles since I was 17 years old, and I must say that I've never, ever had one that has been as good as this. And I was in the lot the other day when I was having some work done, and I was looking at this model vehicle, pretty much the exact same one, the XLT with the 5 liter and all that stuff. And it was 20 to 25,000 more, depending on the package that came with it, than what I initially paid for it. So in Maine, if you get rid of a vehicle, it's almost always because of rust. Even if you manage to keep it a long time, because a vehicle can be repaired forever. I mean, they make parts, they replace them, but if it's rusted out enough, you have to consider not putting too much money into it, because you may not be able to run it that long afterwards. I'm going to keep this one as long as I can. And I figure at 130,000 miles, I might be at half-life. Fingers crossed. Thanks for watching. I am pleased with my truck. If you have one, whatever one it is, I hope you are too.